I'm Gail from GG Evergreen Bonsai. Today I'm going to start to create a landscape, a Penjing landscape. So on my landscape I'm going to have two mature looking trees, and what I've picked is Picea Alberta Globe, because they're quite a rounded shape originally. What I'm hoping to do is be able to create these into two mature looking trees. I want to minimize the amount of wiring that I do with it being Penjing, which is more natural. So let's hope that I manage to do that okay. Because they have little fine needles, again they will look more in proportion. I have researched what types of bonsais would be appropriate, what types of trees would be appropriate for that landscape, and spruces was one of them. So I'm going to use this Picea Alberta Globe, and again because it's a nice rounded shape and could look like a fairly mature tree quite quickly. One of my special features, I'm just going to give you a little bit of a spoiler because obviously I haven't created the landscape or the video yet, is this. So this is a beautiful piece of timber. So this is oak, and then we've got some epoxy resin which my friend Dom in One Life Wood creates, and he's given me this offcut, and because it looks like a bit of a river, so that's what I'm going to create within my landscape. So as I say, that's a bit of a heads up, and you'll see what I make in the future. So the purpose of this video, I'm not going to do both of these today. I'm just going to do one, just to show you how I've actually created them. So the first thing I'll be doing is removing this out of its pot. I will be repotting the entire tree, and I'll show you what I'm putting it into. So I'm going to put it into some malaysain driftwood. So the type of landscape I'm going to create, this will look like rocks. I'm going to put the tree inside. I will remove this top layer of soil first, and what I'm looking for is the trunk. So when I purchased these trees, I had a really good look at the trunk to see if it had one or several trunks, so to see the potential as a bonsai. So always do that when you're looking. Always look at the trunk, and as you can see here, it's got a nice thick trunk. When I've removed the soil and some of the branches, I will determine which part is going to be the front. So I'm going to remove some of the soil here, and remember I will be removing all of the soil ready to go into that piece of driftwood. I'll put some gloves on because I end up with soil in my nails, and then it spent most of the video trying to clean my nails. So I'm just removing the soil. Now I'm feeling for the roots there, so I'm trying not to rip the roots too much. Obviously I am going to have to remove some of the roots to repot it into that pot. And it doesn't help that this soil is wet. That's always a good tip as well. If you are going to repot, the wetter the soil, the harder it is to actually get the soil out, unless you're going to rinse them. So I'm just loosening off the soil now, off the roots, trying to be as careful as I can. I will be cutting a few of these roots out, but the problem is if you remove the roots in the late winter, you can cause root rot. So we've got to be very, very mindful of that. So I will be trying to remove as little roots as I can. And I'll be honest, if the weather turns cold, I will take them into a cold greenhouse to make sure that they're not freezing as well when they're being repotted. There are some bigger roots here which would normally look really nice. However, I won't be able to get it into the driftwood, so I might wire those down, or I might have to cut those and seal them. I'm giving the roots a bit of a spray whilst I'm working on them so that they don't get too dry. It's not too bad in the winter, but when it gets very hot, you need to be mindful of that as well. First thing I'm going to do is just remove some of the old dry foliage. I've got my gloves on, so it's not going to be too prickly. I can already see there's quite a lot of little branches there which I need to remove. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this back into the pot for now, put the soil in so I'm not holding on to the tree. So you can see on here there's a lot of branches that need to free up some space, so we need to have a lot of gaps between these branches. So again, I need to be a little bit brutal and remove some of the tiny little branches in between, and then we can decide what sort of bigger branches we're going to keep. But at the minute it's very, very dense, so I need to remove quite a few of those finer branches there and the old foliage. And what I've got to think is, because I'm going to minimise the amount of wiring, that is just standing straight up, so I am going to remove that. So we'll have a gap here, but a lot of mature trees do have those sort of gaps, so I'm going to just take this one off. See how we get on. So work with the natural shape of the tree. So what I'm looking at now is some of the branches. I'm going to try and thin out so the branches are a little bit more staggered, so we haven't got branches on opposite sides of the trunk. This will thin it out, get a lot more space around those branches. It will let a lot more light into the tree, which is also good. And again, it will look a lot more natural because a mature tree hasn't got such dense foliage. And also, I haven't decided what the front is going to be. I'm presuming it was there, but because that's quite straight up and I want to minimise the amount of wire, I'm thinking, do I move that to the side? So this is now the front, and then I've got a bit of a curve here, even though this is quite a large branch, and then I could remove that and then it would curve up. So I think I'm going to change and create this as the front. Take that off because that's in the way. I'm going to take this off because this one is straight up, this trunk. So I'll create a new leader. So I'm cutting that. This is now going to be the leader. It's a more interesting shape now. So when I'm thinking about this design here, do I remove this one to make it look like a longer trunk? However, this on this side, it's very thick. It's a very thick branch. And I think if I remove both of them, we wouldn't have much of a tree left. However, if I removed that one there, we'd have a lot more gaps. What to do, what to do. I could always make this into deadwood if I wanted a little bit on there as well. So we've got a bit of contrasting colour and also that it's not too bare. Might try that first, and then if I don't like it, I can remove the entire branch. While I make a decision about that, I'm going to thin out some of these branches to look a little bit more like pads, even though I'm not going to wire them. This is sort of forming a bit of a pad. I might try and separate these a little bit so it's not a full pad, it's a bit too long. Oh, I think this is a bit too high compared to that. So, debating whether or not I need to remove some of the branches here and maybe having this tapering off. As I say, trying to cut this so it shapes it naturally, and that's going off far too straight. So do I remove that top part here? Yeah, I've decided to remove that top branch. I would like it to start to shape over to that branch there, and it's also quite a thick branch as well, so I'm going to remove that one. And we've got an awful lot of buds on that branch there, that terminal there. We have a lot of buds actually appearing here, which would create an inverse taper, so it should be removed. So I'm going to cut this to allow a bit of dye back, so not quite flush. So what do I do? Do I do this? Do I totally remove that, or do I create a little bit of dead wood? I think I'll create some dead wood out of it. To create the dead wood, I'm going to remove the bark. Got some pliers here which will press and loosen those off, and then I can decide how much of the wood I'm going to remove. If I'm going to carve into it slightly. It's important that you remove all of the cambium layer as well. when you put the lime sulphur on and you haven't removed all of this cambium layer, it turns like a pinky colour. So I need to make sure that I've removed all of these. So I think my controversial sort of idea to have the front where this branch comes towards you, I think it looks quite nice and unique. So I'm going to continue with that. I'm going to put some cut paste now onto these wounds, and then I'm going to repot and then put some lime sulphur on to bleach the dead wood. As I said before, I'm going to use this malaysain driftwood as a pot, and on my landscape it will look like rocks that will fit in with the rest of the scenery. So it has a hole in the bottom, so I need to make sure that I put some mesh on to stop any of the grit or the soil dropping out. So I'm going to cut that to size, and then I'm going to staple it onto the base. I'm going to repot the Picea, which is a spruce. They don't have any particular special requirements for the soil, but they do like it to be well drained. So I'm going to put some grit in. I'm going to put a little bit of pumice in, some akadama and some soil. Now the soil I'm going to use is just a multi-purpose compost. It was doing really well in the original compost it was in, so I thought I'm going to put some of that in and see if it's okay with that. So I'm going to mix it into my tray and put it in. So I'm going to start off with some grit first, particularly at the bottom, and then I will mix it throughout the soil as well. So I'm just putting some akadama in now. This is for a couple of reasons why it's gone on top. It looks nice. Akadama also is quite evident when it is wet and when it is dry, so it will show me when I need to water the plant, and it fits in very well with the landscape colours I am going to use. So all I need to do now is clean up, put some moss around the cracks so that it helps to hold the soil, and also to use the lime sulphur to bleach the gin. I wasn't originally wanting to use moss, but then I didn't really think about the cracks and the soil coming loose. So unfortunately, sometimes you've got to make changes to your design to make them work. Actually looks quite nice with the moss on. So this is deadwood whitener. It's lime sulphur, so this bleaches and preserves the gin, which is the dead wood. So this is, you can imagine a tree, a branch is broken, so it could be with the wind, or it could be the snow, heavy snow, and eventually with the wind, etc., the bark has come away. Leaving a very distressed branch. Now this smells terrible, and I've foolishly not worn my gloves, so I'll probably be stinking of it for a few hours. However, I have got the back door open to let the smell out. Now this is yellow, and it will turn branch to white eventually. So thank you for watching. It was a challenge, not being able to wire anything. I've never done that before. So it looks okay, fairly happy with it. Things I would change, but I hope it fits in with my landscape. So if you're curious to see what I'm going to do with this as part of my landscape with the epoxy resin in beautiful oak, tune in for my next video. Thank you. Please subscribe and like.